Have you ever had a picture taken with someone famous? Think about that for a second. Somebody famous. Have you had a picture taken? Who was it? Alice Cooper. Okay. I had a picture taken with Elvis Stoico. Not the Elvis, Elvis Stoico, the skater. That was a long time ago. But it's when you look at those pictures, and you just think, yes, I had it because I knew them very well. No, that's not really true. It's a famous picture, and you're in the same picture, and you want to tell about that story. But when you're going up to have, and you meet somebody, you're not necessarily really calm. You're like a little anxious. You're wondering, will they actually be nice to me, or will they take that opportunity to share? Most people are pretty gracious, I think. I think if we had the cameras like the paparazzi, it'd be different. But when we think about it, it depends on who it is. Who's the famous person that you're following? Because if you scream in their ear, pull them aside, and make them move in a different way, it takes something different. This picture is an interesting one. I thought, the Pope is pretty up to date. He's allowing a selfie with the young people. I thought that was sort of funny. Because, he's a famous guy, but he's also knowing the need for people to connect to him. Sometimes we do that. We don't know what it is that we want to see in someone that we don't know personally, but there's something about them. We want to make a connection. But sometimes those photos will make a difference in your life. Or even that moment will change it. These young people, I don't know what has happened to them. We don't even know their names. All we know is it was posted on the internet that they got to meet the Pope. But you think about the person who is actually standing there. Was it an act of kindness? Yes, he took the time. The people that you met took the time. It's important to be able to take the time and share. A simple act of kindness. But what are acts of kindness today that we expect? Just simple ways of showing we care. We have general greetings here at the door every morning, and although we had a smaller group today, we still met each other and talked with each other, finding out what was going on. Disappointed maybe, and here comes the sun on a beautiful Sunday morning after yesterday's torrential rain. Way too much rain. Jesus, we know, was a kind man who healed and taught. His acts of kindness were often seen by only a few, but impacted many. He calmed the storm on that lake when he wanted to sleep. That he was kind with his disciples even after they awakened him. He was so tired he wanted to sleep, and he was sleeping through a storm. He had enticed many people to listen to his parables, teaching them about life as it was and as it could be. However, there were times when Jesus needed to get away from the crowds, where he could reassess his teachings, and more importantly, he needed to pray. But the crowds continued to get larger wherever he went. People were anxious to hear his words for their lives, because it would change them. His wisdom, and how he taught about daily interactions with people, he took with the ordinary and made it special, a different way of approaching life. On many occasions he taught and also brought healing to those who searched for something bigger than themselves. They learned through his actions and interactions with people about life, how to reach out to others in kindness, how to be human and to care. On such an occasion, a crowd is gathering to hear Jesus speak. He's just on his regular route. He was on one place. He had planned to go from one place to another. But one of the things happened that changed the course of his plan for that day and changed the lives of people in a community not too far away. While Jesus was speaking on way to one place, a synagogue ruler by the name of Jairus sees Jesus, and he runs up to him and falls at his feet. Jairus knows who he is. He's charged with correct administration and due conduct of worship. He's a synagogue ruler. He's very involved in the community gathering place. And for Jairus to go see Jesus could not have been an easy one, but he's under desperation. His child is dying. We don't know what was wrong with her, but at 12 years old, she was not well and dying. Jairus has seen Jesus heal people. And many people have talked to him about who this Jesus was. And so in desperation and in faith, he goes up to Jesus while Jesus is addressing a large group of people and says, "Please come, my daughter is dying. I need you to touch her and heal her." Jairus believed that all he had to do was touch his daughter and this would make a difference for his daughter. A simple act of kindness. Jesus is moved by Jairus' plea and changes his plans for the day. And so he begins to walk to Jairus' home, and the crowd is still following him. They want to see what's going to happen. What will Jesus do? For to Jesus, a simple touch would make a difference in that family's life. But in the crowd, there's a woman. There's a woman who has been bleeding for 12 years. 12 years, the same age as the little girl who is now dying. This woman is desperate to find healing, and no one has been able to help her. She's poor, because any doctor she's gone to cannot heal her, but still charge for the time. She's anemic. She's weak. She's bent over. She's weak. She cannot go too far, but she hears that Jesus is coming. And she's out there in community, which goes against social law at the time. She was hemorrhaging all the time. She should not have been out in public. But she hears that Jesus is going to be coming along the street, and she merges into that crowd of people. She worms her way into just behind Jesus. If only I could touch his robe, I'll be well. I just have to touch his robe. And she does. She touches his robe. And she feels something. Oh no, Jesus is turning around. What did she do? Jesus turns around and says, "Who touched me?" And the disciples tell him, "How can we know? The crowd is so huge." But the woman who touched the robe went up to him and said, "Jesus, I touched your robe." I don't know whether she apologized right away, but she was trembling in fear. She told them what happened. 12 years she had been suffering, and she knew right at that moment she was already made well again. She didn't know what Jesus was going to do. Here she was, an unclean woman on the street, touching a man, speaking to a strange man with a crowd around her, worrying about what would happen next. And Jesus just looked at her in a kind way and said, "Your faith has healed you. Bless you. Go and live." Her life would begin anew because Jesus spoke with kindness after she told them the truth of her action, which she did and carried out in faith. A healing takes place in the midst of going to share in another possible healing. Meanwhile, some men from Jairus' house come and tell him that the daughter has died. Jairus, of course, becomes visibly upset, and he runs over to his home. His 12-year-old daughter was just at the beginning of her growing up time. You got to think in the Jewish tradition, Palestine, Jewish kind of times, you think about bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, the 12, 13-year-olds were just getting ready to begin their new life, their teenage years. And often at this point, too, they're promised of marriage for girls because they were so young, ready to go on to the beginning part of their new life. This daughter was now dead. At least that's what some of the people told Jairus. So Jairus, Jesus, Peter, James, and John run over to Jairus' home, and they meet a crying crowd of people as the girl is presumed dead. Jesus tells everybody to leave, get out of here, except for Jairus and his wife, Peter, James, and John. And they go into the room where this child is laying. Jesus takes her by the hand and says, "Get up." And amazingly, with love and kindness, she got up and she walks around. And what does Jesus do? He says, "Go feed her. She's hungry." Because when a person is well, you need to be fed to have the energy to continue to live. And this girl was now alive. You think back, Jairus and his wife celebrated the birth of his daughter when this other woman had begun problems. For 12 years, they watched Jairus' daughter grow up, and the woman who was in suffering. The same 12 years. Same day, they get healed, made well. Why the significance of 12? Was there 12 tribes of Israel? What was Jesus trying to do with his understanding of who these two young women were? Jesus made a difference, not only to those two people, but to the whole community. To celebrate the heritage of the families of their Jewish traditions, but also to recognize that Jesus was bringing something new, a new way to love, a new way to show kindness, a simple act beyond what is expected. The world is hungry for this kind of kindness, and we all know that. All simple acts of kindness, like Jean handing me cookies to take out to Woodsley because she doesn't want to eat them all. Because Jean doesn't want to eat all those cookies, right? But those are simple acts of kindness. To take the plates and all the things that need to go out there. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities to share in kind acts as we are in a church because we care. Most of the time, we never hear about them because it just happens. But God knows them all. The world is hungry for kindness. Anne Berkeley, a writer, coined the phrase random acts of kindness, which promotes the thought, and imagine what would happen if there were an outbreak of kindness in the world. If everybody did one kind thing on a daily basis. Think about that person who you're driving along and cuts you off. That's not a kind act, but you could just, okay, thank you. I slowed down for you. That's good, you go ahead. Those kind acts. Princess Diana endorsed this idea when she said, perhaps we're too embarrassed to change or too frightened of the consequences of showing what we actually care. But why not risk anything? Begin. Carry out a random act of seemingly senseless kindness with no expectation of reward or punishment, safe in the knowledge that one day someone somewhere might do the same for you. We've heard about this in the Tim Hortons lineups all the time. The car behind will pay for the car in front. But that's not just, there's no connection. It's just no face-to-face action. It's that touch that's needed. That kind touch that Jesus demonstrated. If only I could be touched, the woman said. If only, Jairus said to Jesus, if only you would touch my hand. Why is it important for us to greet each other with handshakes and hugs? Because we need to have that human touch. Have you shown kindness today? Think of Jesus and how he healed through his loving ways. He didn't have to heal these people. His plan was not even to go where Jairus' synagogue was. He was going somewhere else. He didn't have to do anything at all. He could have made them whole, just saying, okay, they're ready, they're done, they're fine. But no, he went, he touched, he shared, he loved. How are we doing that? If we are to be followers of Christ, how are we willing to reach out and touch others with words and actions? This is what we're called to do. Let us give thanks to God that we're able to do this in faith and with the hope that Jesus brings change because of what we can do in word and action. Let's pray. Wonderful and holy God, we just praise you. And we give thanks, O God, that you have given us an opportunity to share acts of kindness. And we do so in the name of Jesus, for he loves us. He calls us to be his. And just to do something for another person. Not because we'll gain something, but because we can do something to share in love. Bless us, O God, as we hear these stories this day, reminding us again of how to love one another in Christ. Amen.